to actually do that. Some of the chapters. What are the big religious trends currently impacting the world? Folks, person after person after person is saying to me that the world is changing. The political world is changing. Have you noticed it? I want to share with you something. It's more important to recognise that the religious world is also changing. It is changing big time. There are major changes occurring, and unfortunately, many of us haven't actually picked it up, haven't actually recognised what those changes are. What do the scriptures say about deceptive end-time voices? These are the titles of the chapters, chapter after chapter. How does Jesus answer end-time questions? The first 3 chapters deal with Matthew chapter 24, and we just work our way through Matthew 24. We then move across to where Jesus amplifies the message in Matthew chapter 24 to Revelation chapter 14, 6 to 12, and Revelation 18, 1 to 4. Those are the central passages that are dealt with in this particular book. Why is the gospel so relevant in this era? Why is a righteous judgment an essential precursor to justice making? Our entire world is calling out for justice. Is it possible without a righteous judgment? Tomorrow, I'm going to spend our entire program just dealing with this one. I'm going to be dealing with this chapter by chapter at the Brighton Church every Monday night, immediately after Big Camp. But this one, I believe, is so important, we're going to do that one tomorrow. Does the gospel have anything to say about evolutionary belief? I believe it does. Does the Bible say anything about the institutional church? I believe it does. Is the ecumenical spirit the same as biblical unity? Now, the ecumenical spirit, for those of you, that's a big word. The ecumenical spirit is the coming together of all world religions. Is that the same as biblical unity? I actually argue it's not. You'll see it in this particular book. We don't have time to do that one at this meeting. Why is genuine worship facing the perfect storm? Is religious freedom under threat? Is the book of Revelation recognisable in today's events? My friends, I believe more than anything that right now we are living in the most significant era of this Earth's history. I don't believe it's business as usual any longer. And I believe if we look at the world religious trends, we can see it. It's the religious trends, not the political trends, that are so important. Okay, now if you want a copy of the book, it is at the Adventist Book Centre there. Also, if you want it on from Amazon, that's the QR code, and that'll take you directly to. It costs $25 at the book centre and $25 Australian on the on Amazon as well. I believe we need to be talking to the world in which we live and exist. Okay, let's come to it. Stronger together, united in mission. Do you know, I want to make a suggestion to you that it's physically impossible to be together unless there is some unity in mission. Last night we actually saw that. Do you remember it? Welcome to the church of my youth. Here it is. It's deep in the working class suburbs of Sydney. In its heyday, it boasted about 70 members. In that era, there was probably 6 young people. We went through a period of significant theological conflict, but somehow this church managed to rise above it. You know, my friends, never despise small churches. If you are part of a small church, care for your young people. There were only 5 or 6 of us at this particular church. I was there from probably the age of 12 through to about the age of 18 when I left to go to Avondale College. This church did some things that for that era were truly remarkable. I mean, for example, I can well remember one Sabbath afternoon sitting down in the I can well remember sitting down in the church hall, and the church fathers insisted that we go through. We were going out doing some letterboxing, and we had to put our initials on every piece of literature we were going to put, just very small, up in the corner, so that when they came in, we would be able to identify, the church could identify who had put them into the person's letterbox. This was the missionary activity, a number of Sabbath afternoons. I well remember the elder coming to me. He said, "Gary," he said, "two of your letterboxes cards have come back in." I said, "Oh, that's good." He said, No. Now you've got to follow them up." Now, I'm only 14 years of age. Now, of course, the church elder didn't leave me to do it alone. The church elder went along with me, and together, at 14 years of age, we are doing a Bible study together. Somehow this church managed to avoid the conflict of the 1970s. Don't despise small churches. I'll go a step further. I believe Adventism actually functions best within a small church environment, because then people become involved. Inside that church, this picture was taken about 10 years ago. I attended this church about 10 years ago with my father, just shortly after he was baptised in his 80s, long after I had left home. Everything's the same. Same pews, same wood panelling, same pulpit, same three angel symbol. Do you see it? There it is there. Three angel symbol. That was put in during the era that I attended the church. You see, one of the church tradesmen felt that it was important that we give this symbol to the church. So one of the church tradesmen took out his tools, created the three angel symbol, and there it sits. 10 years ago, it was certainly still there. Now, this symbol, what does it mean? Does it mean anything? Is it relevant to us today? Now, during those years, the three angel symbol was actually everywhere. Those of you who are my age would be well aware that this symbol was everywhere. Now, it was never officially adopted as the Seventh-day Adventist Church symbol because, well, there were just so many of them, and in those days you didn't worry about branding. In these days you do, but in those days you didn't. So everywhere you went, there was a different logo. It was the undisputed logo of the denomination, and you could actually, every church had three angels. Every church had a different three angels. Some were good, some were very artistic, some were a little bit average. In fact, I can name a few that were very, very average. Now, this was the undisputed logo of the denomination. You would see it reflected what Seventh-day Adventists were all about, the three angels' message. Now, exactly what is the three angels' message? Well, it's important that we understand, because I'm really conscious that today, more and more, certainly what I've found, is that people are saying the three angels' message is relevant. But you know, more and more as a pastor, what I'm discovering is that many don't even know what the three angels' message is. Do you agree? Now, what are they? Well, come with me, if you will, to Revelation 14, 6 to 12. Now, we're just going to look at what they are so that we're all on the same page. That's why I'm opening this up. And then I'm going to go a slightly different direction. You see, the three angels' message, Revelation 14, 6 to 12, is placed in a context whereby immediately after these three messages go to the fore, you get the second coming of Jesus Christ. Christ comes. This is the last message that goes to the world immediately before Jesus comes. Now, way back, the Seventh-day Adventist Church actually adopted this as their mission and purpose for their existence. Now, this is what it says. I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven. This is Revelation 14, verse 6. I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, "Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. And worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the fountains of waters." And another angel, a second, followed, saying, "Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she's made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or in his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation." It does go on a little bit past there, but my space is limiting me. Do you hear the message? Do you see the relevance? No, of course not. Of course not. We keep hearing that this is a relevant message, but is it really? Is it relevant to the contemporary world in which we're living today? Now, in 1997, a new logo was introduced, and I've got no problem with this logo. I think it's a beautiful logo. You probably are aware of it. You recognise it. The Bible's open, the cross in the centre, the flame circling an imaginary world there. I think it's a really great. It's a well done logo. Church, we all have this logo, and I have no problem with this logo. It's interesting, when it was introduced in 1997, some of you who are older might remember some of the discussions that were actually held at that time. I certainly do. What's really going on here? Are we moving away from our emphasis on the three angels' message? It was almost a sinister type argument in some places. Interestingly, it wasn't the only attempt, it wasn't the only recommendation that came out. There was another logo that came out by the South Pacific Division before this one was released by the World Church. That one, I think, almost unanimously got the thumbs down. Do you remember it all? Don't remember it? I should bring that and insert that particular one. This logo, introduced almost 20 years ago. Now, that leaves something of a conundrum. How are the three angels viewed today? Good question. How are they viewed today? How are they viewed in your church? How are they viewed in the conference? How are they viewed in the world church? These are significant questions. Well, actually, the answer to that question depends on who you talk to. Depends on who you talk to. Now, if, for example, you talk to Ted Wilson. Now, Ted Wilson, you may or may not be aware, is the president of the General Conference. Now, coming up very soon, later this year, I think it's in June, there's going to be a World Church session, a World Church body is going to come together, and they are going to be meeting somewhere over in the US. If you go on to the website that's advertising that session, you've got the president, Ted Wilson. He actually gives a welcome to the session. This is what he says. God has given Seventh-day Adventists a special message to share with the world, found in the three angels' messages of Revelation 14, 6 to 12, and a fourth angel in Revelation 14, 1 to 4. Sorry? And Revelation 18, 1 to 4. These messages are surely more relevant now than ever before in the history of the earth. And God invites each one of us to be part of his last day proclamation. That's Ted Wilson. He's the president of the General Conference. What I'm sharing with you today is not fringe theology. This is heart and core of what Adventism is about. Now, let's go to our conference. What's our conference say about the three angels message? Well, last year, in my 12 months off, I actually appreciated being able to get the emails that get sent out on a regular basis from the conference. One of the ones that came out was this particular one. It was one where I think it was Pastor Neil Schofield and our good friend Pastor David got together, and they'd produced a PowerPoint talking about the mission and purpose of our church in this conference. Now, our mission, this is how it's expressed. Our mission, this is the South Australian mission. This is not fringe theology or anything like that. Make disciples of Jesus Christ who live as his loving witnesses and proclaim to all people the everlasting gospel by the what? What is it? By the three angels' message in preparation for his soon return. Do you see it? Apparently the General Conference president's clear. Our conference says they are clear on it. In fact, it actually goes further. Because if you happen to go into the governing document of the South Australian Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, this is the purpose statement in that constitution. The purpose statement says this. The objective of the conference and any affiliated entity or entities of the conference is to facilitate the proclamation of the everlasting gospel of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ in the context of the messages of the three angels of Revelation 14, 6 to 12. Now, my friends, this is in the Constitution. The Executive Committee doesn't have the authority to change this. This is in the Constitution of the Seventh-day Adventist Church here in South Australia. And I'll tell you, right around the board, right around Australia, it's exactly the same. Conference after conference after conference. It's true in the Union Conference. It's true in the division. This is stated as the mission and the purpose. You know all those discussions that you've had in your church talking about your mission and purpose? This is stated in our Constitution. And even more significantly is this. The objective of the conference and any affiliated entity or entities of the conference is to. Now, what's an affiliated entity? The what? A church plant. What about the churches? What about the schools? Oh. Entities, plural. What about ADRA? We, according to this, don't have any choice. If you are a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I'm sorry for being just so... You see, there are some subjects that we're not allowed to talk about, isn't there? This is actually one of them. We need to talk about it. And any affiliated entity or entities of the conference is to facilitate the proclamation of the everlasting gospel in the context of the messages of the three angels. This is absolutely key. Now, folks, I had a privilege last year in my travels to visit a lot of Seventh-day Adventist churches. Some of them had their mission statements. And I actually am one of those people that goes into the church and, when you actually see something on the notice board, I don't mind actually standing there and reading it, particularly when it's a mission statement, because I like to know what this church is up to. Do you know how many churches don't even mention a prophetic purpose for the denomination? Now, let's keep going. How did the three angels achieve such prominence? Well, actually, from our history, from Ellen White. This is what she says in Testimonies to the Church. In a special sense, Seventh-day Adventists have been set in the world as watchmen and light bearers. To them has been entrusted the last warning for a perishing world. On them is shining wonderful light from the Word of God. They have been given a work of the most solemn import, the proclamation of the first, second and third angels' message. There is no other work of so great importance. They are to allow nothing else to absorb their attention. Now, just see that there. Do you notice it? They are to allow nothing else to absorb their attention. Now, folks, in ministry, there are many different types of people. In some cases, there are people that I call one ministry persons. Right through the church, you will find one person who is passionate about pathfinders. All they can think of is pathfinders. And they've been raised up by the Lord, I believe, to do that type of ministry. There are others who are passionate about other ministries. My question to you, was Ellen White a one ministry individual? No, she wasn't. You see, as a result of Ellen White, we've actually got the health system. We've actually got the teaching system, the education system. We've got the publishing enterprise. We've got the media work. It's all as a result of Ellen White and what she did actually share. Yet here she says, they are to allow nothing else to absorb their attention. What is she saying? Well, do I remember? I was the pastor in one particular area, and there was a gentleman, I'll call him Second Coming Bill. Second Coming Bill was a fantastic preacher. He kept on getting invited by all the surrounding churches to preach. If, however, he was invited to your church to preach, what would he preach on? The second coming. He might be invited to do a baby dedication, and he would find a way to put the second coming into the baby dedication. You see, he was a fantastic preacher. He had many sermons, but he had only one subject that he ever wanted to talk about. That was the second coming. Is Ellen White here a second coming, a one ministry person? No, she's not. She's not. But what Ellen White does is says things like this. This comes from the book Evangelism. God did not design that the medical missionary work should ellipse the work of the third angel's message. The arm is not to become the what? Is not to become the body. The third angel's message is the gospel message for these last days, and in no case is it to be overshadowed by other interests and made to appear an unessential consideration. When in our institutions anything is placed above the third angel's message, the gospel is not there the great leading power. It is not the great leading power. You see, my friends, what Ellen White is saying is that to this church has been given a prophetic purpose. Let's keep going. A problem, however. There is always a problem. Many struggle with Adventism's links to a dated prophetic message. Not a few people would like to see the emphasis go the way of the three angels branding. Have you heard it? My friends, I've sat on committees at conference, division, union level where we've talked about mission. What is the purpose of the church? Does it have a prophetic purpose? At face value, the argument actually appears convincing. Is a prophetic message that speaks of judgment, Babylon, and hard-to-describe beasts relevant to an increasingly fragile world? How would you respond? On strategic planning groups, in churches and institutions, this has become an oversized elephant in the room. You all know elephants in the room? Sometimes, even if I stand in the middle of the room, nobody acknowledges me. I wish I had time to share with you some of the experiences that I've actually had on committees where there has been a major division, and it happens at local church as well as union, as well as conferences. How are we going to do ministry? How are we going to do mission to the world in which we live? Now, in reality, I have to admit one thing. Society has changed, hasn't it? Horse and buggy to the electronic age. We have to admit society has changed. Should the church change its mission? Multitudes out there, as far as before I do move on that one, since the time of the Adventist pioneers, more than a century and a half has passed. If asked, most of the contemporary population would actually struggle to tell the story of Daniel in the lion's den or name 3 of the 12 apostles. Even worse, few in the community can see any relevance in the Christian scriptures. Multitudes regard the Bible as anti-science, homophobic, and antagonistic to the humanist and feminist ideals of the third millennium. And you're going to talk about beasts. Do you see how the argument goes? This appears to be a convincing, it's an all-consuming argument. What is worse is that the church has also changed. Now, one of the privileges I've had working for Faith FM is that day by day I do need to go on to the religious media because we like to talk about things that are happening in the religious world. And we like to give a biblical understanding on events that are occurring in our world. I went on just a little while ago to George Barna. I really appreciate his ministry. George Barna ministers at the Arizona Christian University. At that university, there is a centre called the Cultural Research Foundation or something like that. They bring some material out that would shock almost any person who is a biblical Christian. One particular piece of research that came out just very recently was this one. He looking at the church. His conclusions were these. Now, this isn't done by Seventh-day Adventists, Truth and morality, according to most church attenders, these are not the people who are in the big wide world out there. Truth and morality are determined by the individual, not by God or the Bible. Yeah? Do you see it? Do you see it in your workplace? Truth and individual, it's individualistic. That's the way it's presented. Truth and morality are to be determined by the individual, not by God or the Bible. And the majority of Christian believers accept that. But he kept going. I had to read this 4 times when I first read this, just to make sure I was getting it right. Life has no inherent value or purpose, but we can make the most of it by doing the things that produce personal happiness. Excuse me? Life has no inherent value or purpose. These are church-attending people. But we can make the most of it. This is where our religious world's at. And this is not me saying so. This is the George Barna research. Then there's this one. Traditional religious practices are not considered to be central or essential to the Christian faith. Those religious practices include, and I'm quoting, reading the Bible, confessing sins to God, and praying. Now, these are church-attending people. They go to church week by week and they put up their hand and say, well, actually those traditional religious practices, the things like reading the Bible, confessing sins to God, praying, they're not essential to be a Christian. My friends, this is an abomination. This is where our religious world is at. Do you know, it's only because of Faith FM I've been forced to go and do the research. And net result, the church has become secular. My church, your church, the pastors, the conference. Now, I know it might not be true in Papua New Guinea, but in the Western world, which is my environment, I suggest to you it is all too true. Now, the reality is this. Can a secular church preach a prophetic message? It cannot. My friends, the two are mutually exclusive. You can be secular or you can preach a prophetic message, but you can't do both. And we're in a secular church. Now, this, to me, left me with some really difficult questions. These are the questions, and these are the questions I actually raise in my book in chapter 3. This raises for me some incredibly difficult questions. The first one is this. What is the place of the 3 angels' message in the 3rd millennium? In short, is it still relevant? Is a prophetic message still relevant in a post-biblical era? This question is central. This question is core. If we cannot answer this question, pack up and go home. Is a message that speaks of judgment, Babylon, and mysterious beasts still applicable to the mission of the contemporary church? Wow. Then, of course, there's this question. Has the 3 angels' message become something of a feel-good promotional slogan? Could it have gone to that level? You know what I'm talking about? It's a sort of slogan that you use when you want to promote a worthy project. The trouble is, nobody really knows what it means. Has the three angels' message degenerated into a motherhood-type statement that church leaders can use to sell the latest programs? Now, you all understand a motherhood statement. A motherhood statement is a feel-good platitude, usually used by a politician, about a worthy concept that few people would disagree with, without any specified plans for realisation. For example, we hear politicians say, no Australian should live in poverty. Do you agree with that? I do. I don't want any Australian child to live in poverty. But my friend, it's a motherhood statement. You see, Christ said things like, the poor you will always have with you. He was the ultimate realist. Why did he say that? Because he knew there would always be people who thought, because of chronic disease, that perhaps we're going to be poor. This is my conviction. I intend to share it over the next 2.5 days. This prophetic message is more relevant in 2025 than it was in the days of the pioneer preachers. That is my conviction, and I want to show it to you. Because I am convicted that many Seventh-day Adventists, we say this is a relevant message to our age. The problem is nobody really knows what it means. Let me show you what it means to me in brief, in general terms right now. Then tomorrow we're going to go into the subject of the judgment in a justice-seeking era, and you'll be blown away by what the scriptures say about that. And then on Friday we're going to look at Babylon. Does that speak to our era? Now, the first angel has the... what does that have? The everlasting gospel. In a world groping for the solutions to hurt and pain and suffering and disease and all manner of societal dysfunction comes a message empowered by heaven that says there's power in the what? There's power in the... Does your world need that particular message? Unfortunately, this is all that we normally hear about the three angels' message. It stops at that point normally. But my friends, the thing I particularly appreciate about the everlasting gospel is Paul says something in Romans chapter 1 that to me is very powerful. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation. Three angels met. This, I've got an entire chapter in my little book that just deals with the gospel. This is a beautiful message. This is the heart and core of Adventist teaching. What's our purpose and our mission? Our purpose and our mission is to share the gospel with a hurting world. But the beautiful thing about the three angels is they then contextualise. They contextualise the three angels' message. They contextualise the gospel to our era. And it's this contextualisation that is so absolutely vital and important. Let me show you how it happens. The first angel contextualises the gospel. The first angel declares, the hour of his judgment has what? The hour of his judgment has come. At a time when humanity is calling for justice on multiple fronts, comes a message that speaks of a righteous judge doing that which man is incapable of doing for himself. If you come tomorrow, you'll discover why man is incapable of producing a just world. We're going to look at this. But significantly, this angel's message turns around and says, hey, there is a great God in heaven. There's an omnipotent God in heaven that comes with a message that speaks of the message speaks of a righteous judge doing that which man is incapable of doing for himself. The first angel calls humanity to worship the Creator God. At a time when the majority of the world have adopted some form of evolutionary belief comes a call to worship the omnipotent one, the life-giving God. When I was studying this, the thing that really jumped out at me is that, yes, this is the creator God, but I prefer to translate it as the life-giving God. You see, if you deny that Christ can create, you are denying the life-giving God. Do you believe that our world needs a message that provides a more abundant life and a better life? Now, this is where it gets, to me, so relevant to our time. This, I believe, is the great relevance of this message. This is how it's relevant. And folks, when I realised this, a chill went up my spine, I'm telling you. In an era when the environmental movement is attempting to save the physical world by their own effort, and the justice movement is attempting to create a perfect society through human political endeavour, a call comes from heaven that points to a saviour who responds to the core issues of our time. Do you see it? Do you see it? My friends, this is a message that is relevant to our time in the here and now. You've been called to a prophetic message. My friends, this is not going to be a popular message. If in fact you want to claim, you're not going to get it by presenting this prophetic message. The problem is, you've been commissioned to give the prophetic message. In an era when the environmental movement is attempting to save the physical world by their own effort, and the justice movement is attempting to create a perfect society through a human political endeavour, a call comes from heaven that points to a saviour who can do both. Is that relevant? My friends, I suggest to you that nothing is more relevant. And yet in church after church after church, we've got worthy community projects. And please, I don't want to speak against worthy community projects. We need them. We're in a hurting world. That is part of our mission. But do you know, my friend, if year after year, month after month, sermon after sermon, we're never mentioning this message, then I believe we have abandoned our prophetic mandate. Make sense? That's the great reality of our time. The second angel speaks to institutionalised religion. To an age where institutional churches are preaching social justice, the environment, and ecumenical unity, but say nothing about sin, repentance, and salvation. And we're going to dig into this on Friday. We're going to dig into this on Friday. There comes a message that transcends the denominational spectrum, calling for disciples to come away from politicised unity, because that's what it is, and I can show it, and stand with the biblical Christ. And folks, I've stopped using the term standing with Christ. I've stopped using that term. I now use the term biblical Christ. Do you know why? Because Christ said in Matthew chapter 24 that there will be many Christs, many false Christs. I want to stand with the biblical Christ. We're going to look at that message on Friday. The third angel speaks of a developing new world order. Now I want to ask you something. Right now, are you watching what's happening in your world? Yes? I hope so. My friends, I cannot believe what it is that I am seeing. Even more significantly, I cannot believe the number of secular writers who are saying that our world order is changing. Our world order is changing. Secular writers are saying it. You know, I agree with them. It is. Their problem is they don't know where it's going to. I do. How do I know where it's going to? The third angel. The third angel tells me precisely where it's going to. The third angel speaks to a developing new world order, to an age when politicians sell Bibles and clergy manoeuvre for political advantage. There comes a message that calls for believers to worship in spirit and in truth. That's the message that we've been given. To an era when multitudes can see the gathering storm clouds threatening humanity, comes a prophetic message that reveals a change in the world order. I deal with this in the last 2 or 3 chapters of my little book. I try to. With some very recently published material. My friends, I don't need to go back to the 1750s. There's material being published just in the last 5 and 6 years that is enough to make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. This message identifies key political entities and the supporting religious voices that will bring about a new world order. This message declares that once again, extreme limits are going to be placed on the religious freedom of those who would stand with the biblical Christ. My friends, I believe that right now, it's no longer business as usual.